OutKick 360 is back. Alongside Chad Withrow and Paul Koharski, I'm Jonathan Hutton, Lance Lee, Jacob Swanson, David Reed, Emma Notestein, cast of thousands, making it happen across the OutKick network as we broadcast live from Studio G in Nashville, Tennessee at Blackbird Studios and the Blackbird Academy. Glad you're with us. If you're watching on YouTube, we hope you'll subscribe and share the link on social media if you're following along on Twitter right now. If you're on Facebook as well, you can also subscribe to the podcast by searching out OutKick 360 content. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning. Good to be back. Day after a national championship game. We got some breaking news coming up at 1:15 Eastern, 12:15 Central today that we will let you know about at that time. But a game that we all wanted all season long in college basketball turned out to be the game that really no one wanted because it wasn't that great of a game. But Baylor was great last night.
Just dominant. The two things that really amazed me about Baylor, how they were so consistently able to have a big guy down on the low blocks under the basket for offensive rebounds. It was just stationed there, like planted like a tree. And every time a ball came off the rim, he was able to back out from under the basket and be in prime real estate to grab balls. And by the way, the rebounds were staying near the basket last night. Particularly the offensive rebounds. They were not careening and bouncing out. They were coming down near the rim, and Baylor was consistently getting them back. And then the Zags, just every time they closed, and I think all three of us felt good about their chances at halftime. It was really miraculous for them to get to within 10 at halftime on foul shots and on some fortunate plays. Every time they got it within, where you felt like 10, 12, okay, they're in range. Baylor had some big answer where they got it back to 16. And the feeling in that game, the difference between 10 and 16 felt like a mile.
Well, they got it to 9 with about 14 minutes to play. And there was this feeling, okay, here come the Zags. And then Paul mentioned it, quickly back to 16. And
there was a block and a three, and it was 16 with about 13 minutes to go, and that was it.
I mean, it was 9. Oh, here we go. Excuse me. It was didn't clear my throat before
do your
the show.
pre-show clearance for everyone.
I'm telling you, this pollen is ridiculous right now in Middle Tennessee.
Allergists are.
So it was 9-0. It was 11-1. Right? They're up 19 in the first half. When they cut it to 10, you think they have a shot.
2 fouls on Suggs quickly.
It was either 58-49 or 68-59 at one point. That's the shortest margin, the smallest margin in the second half. 9 points. And then Baylor went on that run after that, and it was over. After that three by Flagler made it 16.
That's the killer
But
moment.
it was, I think it was 67 shots in the game by Baylor to 51 for Gonzaga. So
outrageous.
16 more shots.
It's incredible.
Because of offense. And you talked about the tree. It was like they were planting themselves like a tree. Well, that tree was named Vital, who's a 6'5", stocky, just bull of a man down low. That he was manhandling people on the low block and going wherever he wanted. It was an expert game plan by Baylor, but Mark Few said it well. He said, look, they were just way more aggressive than we were. He said we were playing sideways the whole game. That they really just got us out of our sets and what we wanted to do, and that was the story of the game from the jump. Baylor was so aggressive defensively, and I don't know if Gonzaga wasn't ready for it or Gonzaga just couldn't handle it. I mean, Baylor was just, I don't know how else you slice it, guys. And I was on here yesterday saying I thought Gonzaga was going to roll. Clearly I was wrong. Baylor's just a better team.
Also, Baylor had a lot of foul trouble there. And Gonzaga, I thought, well, here's part of their chance. They're going to foul some of these big guys out and kind of change the framework of the game by getting rid of these offensive rebounders, getting rid of these guys who are planting themselves underneath the basket. And Gonzaga did have a lot of baskets just going straight to the rim. Their guards going straight to the rim. And they weren't taken out of that element of their game so much. But I thought, well, one way they can change things here with all this foul trouble is to foul people out. There was somebody fouled out relatively early, right? One of the big men with 8 minutes left. But it didn't change anything. Baylor was not flummoxed at all by that. They're deep
Gonzaga.
with those big guys, big football-type bodies.
Consider Gonzaga shot 51% and lost by 16 points.
Yeah.
That's how dominant Baylor was last night.
Yeah, had a higher shooting percentage than Baylor. Baylor was better from three, but that's not a surprise. Baylor was the best three-point shooting team in the country coming into the game. And I can't help but think if they don't have that 3-week layoff because of COVID, Baylor may have been the first team since 1976 that we're talking about with an undefeated season. Losing only 2 games all year to Kansas and Oklahoma State in the Big 12 tournament, that was just a dominating performance. And we can talk about both sides of this last night with this game. But the job done by Scott Drew is one of the greatest coaching performances in the history of any sport. He took over a program in 2003 that just saw a player murder another player and the head coach cover it up. And they were facing huge NCAA sanctions. I was reading this morning at The Athletic, and I think it was Dana O'Neill who wrote it. Scott Drew signed a contract that was 26 pages long with a 6-year deal to protect himself against everything that was coming with the NCAA. And Homer Drew, his dad, he said signed a contract that was 2 pages when he originally signed at Valparaiso. But that was on purpose. But he gets there, he wins with optimism. Former players said it's almost annoying how good of a mood he's in at all times, even after a loss. But taking over that program with no basketball history, they had been to 1 tournament in 1988. Before that, it was 1950. And then to get to 9 NCAA tournaments in 18 years, to win a national title, it is difficult for me to think about a comparable coaching job that's done at a place where there was really nothing before. You can look at Mark Few and say, boy, he built a small Jesuit school in eastern Washington State into a national power, but they were good before he got there. They had that 1 Sweet 16 run. It had been done before. He built it into this national powerhouse, and it's a remarkable job. But what Scott Drew has done is incredible.
And they showed the clip from his introductory press conference. And look, you're going there to rebuild an absolute disaster with massive, murder.
Yes,
it doesn't get worse than murder in your program, and a cover-up murder by the coach. And he's saying, we're here to go to NCAA tournaments. We're here to win the NCAA tournament. That's a laughable statement at the press conference, right? I mean, that's an all-time paint as big a happy face on the program as you can. But and looking at it now, it sounds great, as he's doing it. But at the time, who wasn't laughing at that? I mean, that's a ridiculous proposition for where the program was when he took it over.
Right after the NCAA sanctions came down, they had 2 years they could only play a Big 12 schedule in postseason bans. And they were getting standing ovations from fans at Texas and Kansas because of how hard they played in 25-point losses. And Bill Self is going to congratulate the players who stayed at Baylor and stuck with it after losses. But they go from that in 2004, 2005 into this national powerhouse their staying power is real. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be contenders for years to come. There would be no reason now for Scott Drew to leave. He had plenty of opportunities to leave before and go to a different job, and he stayed and built this into a national power. The only comp I can think of is if a Kansas football player murdered another one, their head coach covered it up, they hired a coach, and in 18-year Kansas football wins a national title. And that's the history of Baylor basketball. It's a Kansas football type history, one of the worst programs in the Power Five, to now a national champion in the rubble of this awful mess that was left in the previous regime. That is what Scott Drew's accomplished, and it sounds like a long time, but that's 18 short years. It took him 5 years to get to the tournament, which was a remarkable accomplishment. He had a 6-year contract originally, but then 18 years later to win a national title,
and they've had some
incredible.
good teams in between there that could have achieved a Final Four run. They had that type of talent, but were upset along the way. And what's interesting, Chad, is despite everything you're saying, the headline today is Gonzaga misses out on their Cinderella season, capping off with a national championship unbeaten year.
Let me squash this also, because this is just a ridiculous take that I've seen from some media members, which is irresponsible almost. This idea that Gonzaga is not an elite program because they lost in the national championship game and they got beaten soundly by Baylor is absolutely asinine. This is an absolute powerhouse in college basketball.
And
there's no way around it. And for people that's blaming Gonzaga for their conference, someone's tweeting me right now saying, well, they should join the Pac-12. Because the Pac-12's in a hurry to bring on a school that doesn't have a football program and add them to the conference, Gonzaga schedules everyone that will play them. They duck no one. They had games against Baylor and Tennessee canceled because of COVID this year. They will play anyone who will schedule them at any time. And here's how it works. All these power conference elitists out there that are saying, oh, well, this is just further proof that there's one guy saying Gonzaga doesn't deserve a number 1 seed. Funny, I didn't see him saying Illinois didn't deserve a number 1 seed when they got blasted in the second round by Loyola Chicago. They got to the damn national championship game and they rolled the entire way until the Final Four. Of course they deserve
we saw the two best
a number
teams.
1 seed. Yeah. But let me break it down to you simply for people.
Ohio State lost, Texas lost early.
Well, the people
power
that
conference
can't
teams.
seem to understand what this is. It's flip-flopped. What Gonzaga does is, yes, they play in a weaker conference. Their strength of schedule goes down once they get to January. Where Power 5 conference schools, their strength of schedule goes up. I feel like we need Paul's mashed carrots for this. It goes up. But what your Power 5 conference team does is they play terrible teams at times in the non-conference to get ready for a tough conference slate. It's flip-flop. Gonzaga plays all their tough games early in the season because that's what they have to do. And they will schedule anyone. They don't duck anyone. They win the majority of those games, if not all of those games. Like we saw this year, they do that to stabilize themselves because they're going to go into a weaker conference and win pretty much every game. And oh, by the way, there is an art to dodging the awful loss. Someone tweeted me and said, well, what do you say to a program that had 5 great wins and no bad losses but had a bad strength of schedule? I say great. How many Power 5 conference schools can claim 0 bad losses? Everyone's got bad losses in college basketball. It's just remarkable the verbal and mental gymnastics people will put themselves through to try to say that that the Gonzaga is not an elite program. They are an elite program regardless of what happened last night. I felt bad watching Mark Few in that game because you have to almost feel powerless because he was outclassed in every way. And he said it after the game.
Well,
he said, look, this is not about us. We had a historic run this year that I'll always remember. But Baylor whipped us. There's no way around it. They were just simply better than us in every facet of the game.
You could see him trying to do the calculus in his head, looking up at the scoreboard during that game.
What do we need to?
Yeah, like we need to cut it by, we cut it to 10 with 6 minutes to go. Can we get it to 5 with a minute and a half to play? And you could see that churning, and every time he looked up, the score was broadening.
Well, yeah, look, plus widening. The game that they played Saturday night, if you need some validation of Gonzaga, which you shouldn't. I mean, they played an all-time classic game against a power conference team that was as hot as anybody in the tournament, and they played a flawless game against a team that gave them a flawless game. So I think if you're arguing against them somehow, that UCLA game tells you everything you need to know.
There's no way to argue against Gonzaga.
About them. I agree. But if you're trying, go. Didn't you watch Saturday night?
That's also not giving Baylor enough credit. Baylor would have whipped anyone last night.
Oh, absolutely. And I undercredited Baylor.
And by the way, Mark Few was quick to give Baylor credit.
I know.
To his credit, he was saying, look, this
right away, it's all about
again, Baylor could have been the undefeated team. I really believe that, watching them play throughout this tournament.
And look at what they did, I mean, in the Final Four. They destroyed Houston. I mean, it wasn't close for a minute. And they destroyed the Zags, who were
beyond that though, they
avoided
the upset despite not playing their best, and I had mentioned that on
Rutgers
the show.
Game where
they were sluggish.
In big trouble.
They were coming into the tournament, and Drew had mentioned it. He's like, look, we're not playing up to our capabilities, and I hope that we get it in gear once we get to Indy.
And that's the hallmark of a very good team.
And they turned it on at the perfect time. And because of their defense, it allowed them to struggle on the offensive end at times just to get going. Not struggle. They didn't struggle like they did against Oklahoma State in the regular season in their loss. But they just were not in complete sync. They were in the Final Four. From Saturday to last night, no one in the country is beating them.
And FanDuel's making me reassess my life because I'm picking games more than I would usually be picking games, and I'm horrible at it. I got that over. I was talking 81.5 for the Zags last night. I got it down to 77.5.
Oh, you did?
And I felt terrific about it. It's useless.
Well, and also this
terrific, and they shot 51%. Right.
Right. I should have been in terrific shape at 77.5. I felt terrific.
Look, this all of a sudden people trying to flex on Gonzaga just really has me pissed off coming into the show today. But this is where Twitter gets me angry too, and I'm going to fire off on someone. But if you want further validation about Gonzaga being a great program, they're preseason number 1 already. They're the Vegas favorite to win the national title again next year. They're going to be right back.
No, we know Vegas doesn't know what it's talking about.
People want to say, well, they're going to have overachieving. They're getting 5-star guys. Jalen Suggs is going to be possibly the number 1 overall pick, if not number 2 or 3
and it's terrific.
in the NBA draft. As a freshman, he's a one and done. They've got their next Jalen Suggs in Hunter Salas from Omaha, who is a 6'5", 200-pound combo guard, 5-star player, already signed. They have Chet Holmgren, the number 1 player in America who's leaning towards Gonzaga, who is a 7'1" Dirk Nowitzki clone.
How much does he
who
weigh?
Shoots threes. He weighs 195 pounds. He's got to put on
got to
weight.
go to the weight room.
But he is an incredible talent. They're going to plug and play and be right back in this spot. They recruit at an elite level. They can't help that they're in the West Coast Conference. I don't know what people that hate on Gonzaga want them to do about that. You can't declare that you're in the Pac-12. You can't just inform the Pac-12 office that we're now going to be in the Pac-12. You have to get the invite. If they're turning down a bunch of opportunities to go to major conferences, which they're not, then that's on them. But they're playing everyone they can in the non-conference. It's just ridiculous. But on the Baylor side of it, since we're also talking about the actual national champion, they're not going anywhere either. They've got their all-time best recruiting class coming in next year. They're going to lose 4 of their stars off this team, either to graduation or
the draft,
or early NBA draft. But they're going to be right back.
A lot to come on OutKick 360, another quarterback trade in the NFL, and now the NFL draft begins at pick number 4. We'll explain that. And Chad mentioned it as we started the show, some news locally for the Tennessee Power Hour that is coming your way at 12:15, 1:15 Eastern. Stick with us, OutKick 360 rolls on.
How did I meet Paul Kuharsky? No one ever really meets Paul Kuharsky. It's more like you're abruptly confronted with the presence of Paul Kuharsky. That was certainly the case for me. I remember listening to him on the radio and thinking, this guy can't always be this way. Let me tell you something. He is always that way. The first story I heard of Paul was him running into Steve Gorman, drummer for the Black Crowes, in the parking lot of the old radio station, and telling him that he loved his earlier work and that he was bad live in concert. That is the Paul Kuharsky I know, and it's the Paul Kuharsky that sometimes I love.
Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter. You can also find us on Facebook, all social media outlets at OutKick 360. Instagram, full of stories and photos, videos from behind the scenes. You can interact with us there. And on Twitter at OutKick 360, we read tweets live during the show. You can interact with us no matter the time of day at OutKick 360. Find us on Twitter and Instagram.
So I don't remember the first time I met Chad Withrow, but to me, he was a complete disciple of George Plaster, a piece of dinosaur radio in Nashville. And I wanted nothing to do with that. Hutton and I were going to be paired together, but we didn't know who the third guy was. Clay Travis called me, put in a word for him, and the boss wanted me to sit down with him, and we had a good chat. It went pretty well. I said, I want Joey Kent, but if I can't have Joey Kent, this guy seems like he'll be all right.
So a great classic behind-the-scenes moment for the show. My bachelor party, we decided to go to Bourbon Street in New Orleans for a 3 or 4 day long weekend.
Good choice.
And we had a solid choice of a condo staying on Bourbon Street. When we arrived, we realized it was right on the line. To the left, normal Bourbon Street. To the right, the gay community.
Not that there's anything
It
wrong.
was sort of the Rio Grande of sexuality.
It was. And our balcony was the dividing line. And Paul went to purchase a ton of beads for the trip.
I want to throw some beads.
He went out to the balcony and proceeded to throw some beads. Multiple, hundreds at a time, just trying to get rid of them. He had so many. To the point where a woman walked by, or so we thought, Chad.
Could have been a woman, could have been a man, which prompted PK to yell from the balcony.
I wanted to get said person's attention, but I didn't know how. And I wanted to be polite. So I said, lady or gentleman?
And lady or gentleman received beads from one Paul Koharski in New Orleans.
It was beautiful.
OutKick 360, if you're following us on Twitter at OutKick 360, you can see where Chad just tweeted out one of the 4 images, the renderings that you have for Vanderbilt athletics and the facilities upgrades. The news early last week, $300 million in facility upgrades for the athletic program. We didn't see any mock-ups of what they're thinking about doing, though. Chad has those, and we will put those on the screen at 12:15 today.
Yeah, it's great news for Vanderbilt fans, Vanderbilt alumni, people anywhere that wanted Vanderbilt to make an investment into athletics that they haven't really made in the past. Great news all around with $300 million being allocated for athletics and mainly for football and basketball, which we've been pushing the whole time. These are the money-making, money-driving sports on any major campus, and Vanderbilt is putting those resources to use. And we're going to have full mock-ups of a map that I've tweeted out of where everything will be and what it'll look like, and then some actual artistic renderings of some of the luxury areas around that fans can take part in also. So really cool. That's coming up at 1:15 Eastern, 12:15 Central.
We shall discuss very thoroughly.
FanDuel.com/OK360. Augusta National is where we turn the page. We gave you the odds on the Final Four yesterday in the championship game. And now FanDuel Sportsbook, you bet $5, win $100 on golf's biggest event. Just to make the cut, you can take Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy, or Jordan Spieth to make the cut. You bet $5, you win $100 with FanDuel Sportsbook and the link fanduel.com/OK360. You make an initial deposit of at least $10. You claim the offer by clicking on the banner at the FanDuel homepage.
I will say, Jordan Spieth coming off his first win in some time.
In nearly 1,600 days.
Yeah, and we're all Spieth fans when he was rolling. I remember we had a big conversation on people we'd pay to watch, and Hutton pulled kind of a rabbit out of his hat, and Spieth was his answer, which was a good answer at that time.
That has changed.
It has not been a good answer for the last 1,600 however many days. Because he's not been a sight to see during that period. He might be a sight to see over the next week.
Hutton, you know what I'm going to say to this?
Go ahead.
How are people not signing up right now for this? An offer like this?
To make the cut.
Dustin Johnson's making the cut.
If you're not already on,
by the way, Dustin Johnson.
If you're not on FanDuel, how are you not signing up right now for that offer?
Dustin Johnson is the favorite to
win the whole
Masters
tournament
in Vegas.
So he's making the cut.
You would think so. And then Jordan Spieth is 10-1 last I checked. He's right there, right behind Dustin Johnson after his win. Spieth won his third major. I said 1,600 days. It was 1,300 days. 82 events between victories when he won this past week at the Valero Open. But here's the stat that just blew my mind when I saw it. He's still, in the past 40 years, only Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas, and Jordan Spieth won at least 12 times before turning 28. So he's gone 82 events between victories, and he still qualifies for that group before he turns 28.
What happened to him?
It'd be great to see some.
Have you read anything significant about, like, did he lose something in his swing? Is it his putting game? I'm not familiar enough to know, but it was quite a disappearance.
It's like he caught lightning.
Even if it was close.
Well, his putter was so hot for a while. It's like he caught lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. Such a fickle
And then
game.
that lightning got out of the bottle, and it just hasn't returned.
Couldn't get it back.
And now the hope. I mean, there's a lot of people going into the Masters hoping that this continues for Jordan Spieth.
Oh, yeah. He's a hell of an attraction when he's playing great. By the way, for Dustin Johnson not to make the cut, he has to fall down a well.
Well, he fell down steps at one time and threw out his back a few years back whenever we were there for the practice round. So
tricky back.
Yeah. Brooks Koepka, speaking of injuries, coming off of knee surgery in March, and he's attempting to play. The quote was, "If I knew I was going to finish second, I wouldn't have shown up." I love that. He played 4 holes on Monday, or was it Sunday, and is attempting to give it a go, coming off knee surgery on March 16th. He dislocated his kneecap.
How?
And that's he was playing at home with family. Dislocated his kneecap.
Just messing around?
Yeah. And just a freak accident. So
that sounds painful.
Now he's trying to give it a go, and he's 40-1 on the odds with knee surgery.
I was conflicted this last weekend with my betting because I wanted Spieth to win, so I put money on Saturday night when he was in the lead on Spieth to win, but it was the odds were just even. Like I put $5, win $5. I also put $5 on Charlie Hoffman, who was 3 strokes behind, and it was like a 30-1 payoff if he won, and it got close.
It did
at one point. So while I wanted to see Spieth, I was also thinking, be okay for me if Charlie Hoffman won also.
So you came out even.
Yeah, basically.
Our friend,
I need to do more coming out even.
Our friend Brant Snedeker, 200-1 odds to win this week in Augusta. And speaking of Brant, he's in the photo with PK. You can see the Masters shirt over the shoulder of Paul, the great Masters shirt. And here is the day that he wore this at Augusta National. Us with Catfish Jake on the left.
Our host.
And Brant Snedeker, one of the nicest guys in sports, in just period, that you'll meet. Fantastic guy. We are rooting for Brant Snedeker to win in Augusta.
Oh, absolutely.
It would be tremendous. You know who's not in that
it's
photo?
A remarkable picture of everyone.
You know who's not
really
in that photo? The man who slowed that whole day down, Uncle Guy.
Uncle Guy was already back at the hotel at that point, probably.
Here's the shirt. Let's get a one shot of the shirt.
The great Masters shirt.
There it is.
Have you worn this
There's the bottom of it.
I have worn it since that day. I love this shirt. I've not changed my opinion.
What has been the common? We know that we hate it, but what's the common review from people on the shirt? Like just people that you would go to.
Like most shirts, people
about.
don't comment on your clothing.
But I'm saying like it's a shirt that's really generated a lot of interest. So clearly, other people in your life have to have an opinion on the
shirt. I think it generated
shirt.
a lot of interest based on the fact that I wore it to the Masters, and you guys thought it was too much for the Masters.
I'm not a fan of it just in life in general. It's not just a Masters thing. But I'm not a big short sleeve button up guy, so I admit that I'm biased against.
I was for a long time not a fan of the short sleeve button up, and then I think fashion changed, and it became a more popular kind of shirt. And I moved towards that fashion. I bought it specifically for my 25th. I bought this and another shirt of the same brand and variety in a different pattern as blue and white for my 25th college reunion, and I wore them to
It fits
to
the
New York
background very
City.
well.
Yeah, I think it spices things up.
Should this be a year-round addition to the studio? Is what you're saying?
Just a
huh?
permanent?
Just always around?
Then every once in a while I'll take it home and I want to wear it out that night.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey,
get it washed and get it dry cleaned, bring it back in.
Hit us up on Twitter at OutKick360. We can communicate with you that way.
And we want to communicate.
Free on Twitter says, could Gonzaga go independent? It would kill their chance at an automatic bid, but they could set a new precedent in college basketball and choosing who they play.
They're
Why
not
do
gonna
you
get
need to
enough
go
games
independent? They were just the number
during the
one
league
overall
season.
seed in the tournament.
There's nothing wrong with Gonzaga.
And
Everything's working out great for them. They need to change nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with their schedule.
They want to win last night's game. That's all they want to
make
change.
their schedule an issue because they ran into a buzzsaw that just happens to be in this year maybe one of the all-time greatest college basketball teams like them.
Let's consider this suggestion. If you're independent during conference season, who the hell are you playing? Everybody's playing their conference schedule.
Yeah, they have
you
an allotted
can't get
conference schedule, so you'd have to play a team that's like, yeah, we're willing to play Gonzaga on a Tuesday and then our conference game on a Wednesday.
Which is nobody.
Just filling in gaps where you can't.
Nobody's
no one's going to do
taking that game.
Were people screaming for UNLV to get out of the Big West when they were dominating?
This is a very small percentage of people who are making noise on Twitter and getting too much attention, like we tend to do all the time. I do it too. I do it too. You see the tweet, it annoys you. Some people amplify it. It annoys you further. This cannot be a widespread feeling.
I feel like
it's a couple people who have some volume, and we've got to catch ourselves and tamp it down. I all the time do this.
Well, I feel like you would be more angry with this because this is very much an SEC type take. Your schedule is weaker than
I'm
mine.
angry with that. You've just taken the lead.
Yeah, but that's part of this is, my conference is better than your conference, so you don't deserve anything, even if it's clear that you're better than every team in my conference.
Yeah, if these are SEC people crying, it's ridiculous. Shut up. Big Ten people too. Shut up. Go get to the final yourself and get pounded by Baylor and then talk.
I don't think it's I don't think it's just. I think it's Power Five.
Yeah.
That are mentioning this, but still, I mean, shouldn't we? I mean, I love the fact that I can hold Middle Tennessee State accountable for being terrible at basketball. When you look at the Conference USA schedule that they play, and then you look at the way the college basketball tournament works out, and you see that non-Power 5 schools can go on a run and play a high elite level of tournament basketball.
Power 5's
There's
job.
an expectation to meet now, and I love it across the board.
Power 5's job is to cry about North Texas and Oral Roberts, and you should shut up on that.
Yes.
But you certainly can't cry about the Zags going to the national championship as the number one seed in the entire tournament, as a team that was number one in the country for most, if not all, of the season.
Let's go back. It's not even to me. It's trying to find a reason to hate Gonzaga the way we hate Duke or North Carolina or Kentucky.
Yeah,
you
they're
just
not
can't
hateable
do
that way.
it. It's tough to. Even Timmy is tough to hate.
I mean, what is it
for
about
me? And he's the antagonist.
I mean, and who hates Mark Few?
No one.
Like, there are people that hate Coach K, and there are other coaches who hate Coach K. I don't know a single coach that I've ever heard say a single bad thing about Mark Few. Mark Few and Scott Drew are playing pickleball together the entire time in Indianapolis.
Scott Drew. Coaches hate
Idaho,
Scott Drew because he's the headlines years ago was negative recruiting. They hated the fact that he was coming up with some stories to negative recruit. They didn't think it was the proper way to go about things within their conference. considering some of the recruits they were landing. And you can at least point to that with Scott Drew. With few, it's hard to point to anything negative about that guy.
I don't.
I'm sure you can find some things with his recruiting that people would say behind the scenes, but you can do that with every program.
I just don't get. I don't understand. There are times where I can understand the hate of something.
Yeah.
And I can find the way. Okay, this is why someone doesn't like it. If you're not a St. Mary's fan or a San Francisco fan or another West Coast Conference alum, I don't know how anyone could hate this Gonzaga team or not give them their due. They haven't won a national title. I mean, Mark Few would tell you that's the only step left in front. They've been to 2 national championship games. They've been to multiple Final Fours. They've gotten multiple number 1 seeds. They almost had an undefeated season.
Yep.
They need to win a national title. I mean, there's no way around it to truly cement them as an all-time great program. But, I mean, are they elite right now? And also this whole concept of elite. You know, people are saying, well, this doesn't define as elite. I said, well, then elite to you is like one program. Like, okay, North Carolina is the only elite program in America if that's how you define elite. Or UCLA because of the titles they won. That's the only one. It's just, yes, they're elite. I mean, this is not a controversial stance with them.
It's a non-story that's gotten some wind here. That it's not a thing. It's born out of jealousy, like a lot of these stories are.
Well, looking at the odds for next year already, Gonzaga favored to win the national title in Vegas. Number 2 is UCLA. So, yep. Chad, they've gone with the greatest game we've ever seen and the 2 competitors for number 1 and number 2 to begin the season.
People watched that Saturday night and said, okay, that's it, crown them.
Yep.
They're both the best. It can't get any better than that.
Let's get a rematch.
They're number 1 and 2 next year. There's still a lot of things to happen in that transfer portal this year. There are some big names that have already been deciding to go elsewhere. Baylor and Scott Drew have been very successful over the years with transfers also. So there's some big additions to come that's going to shape the national landscape next year.
Big trade in the NFL yesterday. The Panthers trading for Sam Darnold, which signified 2 things yesterday. First, they are not in the running for Deshaun Watson. That's the first thing I thought of. The Deshaun Watson trade aspect of this is completely gone. They were the team that was being mentioned. I think the Dolphins and one other team, Paul, are still monitoring what's going on in Houston. But Carolina was at the top of that list. They're out of that. Number 2,
the Jets are still there if it could come to fruition if things settle down, but things aren't settling down.
Number 2, they don't think. I think a lot of people looked at the trade and thought, "Oh, this is Carolina not wanting Mac Jones." I saw that trade and thought they don't think Mac Jones will be there.
Oh, I agree.
We know the top 3 picks are quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And they're drafting 9th.
Somebody will be ahead of them. If they're not already ahead of them, somebody will get ahead of them, or they would have to trade up. I also think it's just forestalling it. Look, they see Darnold working with Brady as having a chance to be really good. And if he's not, then they've pushed back the quarterback thing. So
Matt Rule and Joe Brady.
Yeah, so they gave Bridgewater a chance, didn't work out. He's either an expensive backup or you get out of that.
I think they'll draft a young guy later.
Maybe you draft a young guy later, Kellen Mond, whoever. You give it a good full go with Darnold, and if it doesn't work, maybe you resurface for Deshaun Watson if that thing settles down when he's actually tradable for again, or you're dealing up next year to go get the top quarterback, or in 2 years. It's remarkable what's gone on. You and I were exchanging texts yesterday, and Albert Breer took a while to get this right. Chad, the last season from which the first-round quarterbacks all remain with their team is 2020.
Wow.
The entire first-round group. So all split up except for the 2020 draft of last year.
There is a top first-round quarterback from every draft that's done within 2 years.
There's no patience. with that first-round quarterback.
And also, some of them, are just dead misses. Do you think Haskins deserved more time?
No, but more than just that.
It's a miss.
2 seasons?
It's too short, but he's also a miss. And here's
I agree, but
Right.
I'm saying within 2 seasons, part of that too is a coaching change.
Right.
Within all that.
And what have we seen happen? There's a willingness when you bring in Cliff Kingsbury to say, hey, I might like Josh Rosen, but boy, Kyler Murray's attractive. We're drafting high again.
So let's get rid of him.
We're just going to scrap the high pick and go with another high pick. This is happening in the league in a way that it never happened before. Darnold is a chief example. We spent a one on Darnold, but here we are, new regime. We've got the second overall pick. We're drafting a quarterback, and we're shipping this guy out. And he might turn out to be, and 2 2s, right? Or
a second and a third future.
Yeah.
I also think it speaks to
Which isn't a terrible haul, but boy, I'm saying it's not a terrible haul. Look how far we've come. You're turning the number, what was Darnold, the 6th pick? Or I can't remember.
Higher than that, yeah.
I think he
But
was
he's
like,
a third, maybe.
Yeah, 2 or 3.
So you're turning that in 2 years into a collection of lower picks. The fast devaluation of that pick is, it's lightning fast.
Well, it goes to show, though, when you draft a quarterback high, you don't have much time to make that work. And if it doesn't work quickly, in many cases, you're gone. You're fired.
You better have the coach right on the front end of it. So you can't have Adam Gase managing that guy. You've got to have the right coach first.
And what an upgrade for Sam Darnold, going from Adam Gase to now going for Matt Rule and Joe Brady.
He's got to have the weight of the world off his shoulders.
I would think so.
Now. He's got a chance.
It also speaks.
And if they hit, we talk about the resources you spend to get a quarterback. If Sam Darnold's a hit, that group of draft picks that you were talking about that they just gave up for him, that's a steal.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's comparable. It's not as good, but it's comparable to what the Titans gave up for Ryan Tannehill.
This, though, is where I don't fully buy into, and I think Mac Jones is a good player and obviously had a great season in Alabama. I don't buy into the greatness of Mac Jones as much as the greatness for the need of quarterbacks. It's when you're trying to weigh that, is Mac Jones great, or is the need for quarterbacks so great in a draft that someone who's not great is elevated to a top 5 pick or top 10 pick simply because he happens to be the next quarterback on the list? Yeah. And you got to go get a quarterback.
Well, that absolutely elevates him. But the fact of the matter is, if he's the pick in San Francisco and he goes there and he plays well, then he's absolutely worth the third
But you see
pick.
my point. I don't think he's going to be the pick in San Francisco, but I think it's going to be Trey Lance. But point being, you've got this group, and it's not. Are we saying this is a great quarterback group, or are we saying this is a team with a great quarterback need in the draft?
You score them
These
up.
are a group of teams that have great quarterback needs, and that's why it's going to be a quarterback group that slots high, even though there's not true greatness
I'm with you.
outside of 2 or 3 guys.
I think it's just trending that way. You've got to get him. You got to get him. You go up there, you give it a try. If he's not the right guy, you keep going and giving it a try. You try to get the quarterback any way you can, anyhow, until you find him.
We had a caller at one point who suggested you just draft a quarterback with every pick because the position is that important. You got to hit on one of them. So why not just draft a quarterback with every selection you have in the draft as a team and then hope to get one of them right?
He wanted no other players on
the
team.
It's all quarterbacks.
And the draft starts at number 4 now. A few weeks ago we were thinking the draft started at 2 with the Jets.
Yeah.
Now it starts at 4 with Atlanta and what they could do, because they're going to field offers now. If you want to move up in the draft, you have to move up to 4. You can't move up any higher. Those teams ahead of Atlanta know exactly what they're doing, except for San Francisco, but they have a sense of what they're doing and why they traded to number 2 behind New York. Atlanta can field calls now, and you can have a team that will unload more picks to move up to go get their quarterback, maybe Mac Jones.
But you have to love Lance and Jones if you're moving to 4, right? You have to love them both because you don't know which one's there for you.
Or
the same way I think when San Francisco went to 3, you had to love 2 guys because you're not positive what the Jets are doing. The Jets are probably taking Wilson, but they could conceivably take Lance. So you have to love both those guys, I think, if you're San Francisco. Now, if you go to 4, you have to love both, or is Atlanta taking one of them?
Or does Atlanta consider offers not just for quarterback, but for the best non-quarterback. Maybe a team wants to get ahead of Cincinnati at 5 for the offensive tackle in Sewell.
Or does Atlanta say, look, I'll move back to let you take the quarterback, but get me the 5th pick because I want to take the best non-quarterback in the league. You know, we've already seen kind of a 3-way trade with Philadelphia involved with the San Francisco and Miami.
The pre-draft movement this year has been nuts.
Yeah. And oftentimes it doesn't happen until draft week.
And it hasn't included pick number 1. Yeah. That's the first selection has been a foregone conclusion for 2 years. Whoever ended up with the number 1 overall pick for Trevor Lawrence was getting Trevor Lawrence.
I want to pick back up on what you said, though, Chad, because it does bother me a little bit. And I'm going back to Jay Cutler's year. Right, because when Jay Cutler
2006
was drafted, and he went, I think, 11th to Denver. Does that sound
10th,
right?
I think.
I mean, I thought, and I remember Frank Wycheck.
But maybe 11th.
I was on Frank Wycheck's show at that time.
The 4th quarterback.
And he was saying, you know, if you like Jay Cutler, and you have the 4th or 5th pick, take him 4th or 5th. And I argued with him, he's not worth 4th or 5th. I mean, you've got to value him against what the league thinks he's worth. And take him there. And I still believe that. It should work that way. But that's out the window, kind of to what you're saying. Like now it is, if you need the quarterback, it doesn't matter if he's worth the 4th pick.
If you don't have the
league
quarterback.
dictates you have to go get him with the 4th pick.
No, the job dictates. You will be fired if you don't get the quarterback.
Well, right, that's the league now.
The offensive tackle isn't going to help you at all as much as that quarterback.
If you don't have the quarterback that everyone thinks can be the guy.
Right.
Yeah.
But if that quarterback, either that quarterback saves your job or you're out of the job in 2 years when he's not the guy.
That's why you have to draft him. You're forced to do it because if you take him and you miss, you're fired. If you don't have that guy, you're fired. Yeah. You know?
It's a lose-lose. I mean, unless the guy's good. And I'm not convinced. I mean, there's no way all 4 of these guys are good. It's more likely that one of them's good. If you had to bet right now on all 4 of them being at least serviceable NFL starters, or one of them,
I mean,
you're betting one of them, right?
Yeah, but that's obvious based on the stat you just threw out about the first-round quarterbacks not being together
for 2 years
as a class. I mean, that's the easiest bet in FanDuel history. Will these 4 quarterbacks work out collectively for more than 2 years? The answer is no. The question though is, let's keep in mind Shanahan. Shanahan and what San Francisco just did, traded up to 3, not to 2 to get the quarterback after Lawrence, traded to 3. They've got 2 guys in mind. They're saying that there's at least 3 quarterbacks that are going to hit.
They think they're going to make it.
Because we know Lawrence, they love Lawrence. Everyone loves Trevor Lawrence. Beyond that, they're saying the next 2 guys on our list are going to hit, and we're going to take one of them.
Now let's look at the job security.
That's unusual in itself.
Right. Let's look at the job security, picking up on that, of the first 4, all right? So Jets, you got a new head coach, and he's starting with a new quarterback. So you're on the same clock there, at least.
Yep.
And same thing with Urban Meyer. I'm leaving out number 1 because we know Lawrence, nobody's going to get criticized for having picked Lawrence.
Right.
And it's Urban Meyer who's the new head coach. Saleh, new head coach, starting with a new quarterback. His GM's been in place for a little bit in Douglas. So you go to 3. Shanahan is safe. I mean, he's going to be a long-term head coach. He's not going to lose his job over this pick. And Lynch is his minion, right? Lynch is doing what Shanahan wants. Lynch was hired by Shanahan pretty much. So I see a lot of job security there also for Shanahan.
I don't know.
Huh?
I don't know that you can say that about anyone.
I don't know what a lot of job security is anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
you have to win.
If this
2 out of 3 years,
badly,
you better have a winning record.
He'll be gone just like anyone else. Not that one Super Bowl trip. It's not going to save him for that long.
I think
if they make a bad pick at quarterback.
I think if Shanahan tanks with this, he'll get another job.
Yeah, he might get another job.
Right,
but I'm saying
that's not job security.
It's not job security.
But
not with San Francisco.
You get my point. He's not. I think Shanahan is an NFL coach who's going to be an NFL coach for a while. Arthur Smith at 4, just starting out.
Right.
We don't know, but he's got a veteran quarterback who's going to be his starter this year. And then you jump to the next quarterback team who just made a deal is Carolina, who's desperately searching but still also in the very early stages, who I think it's worth taking a crack with Darnold at that cost.
Well, and with Watson off your radar now.
Right, and then I'd go to Washington as a team to discuss. I mean, I think I got a lot of faith in Rivera. I like the direction Washington's heading. It's in a bad division now. They don't have a quarterback answer, but they've made a lot of moves everywhere else that have them going in the right direction. A defensive-minded football team. You know, I think they're making the right calls on who isn't their quarterback.
Right.
Which is part of it.
Paul, you once did a story on Pac-Man Jones, speaking of high draft picks, and how much money he spent at a restaurant.
You know, I think it's in the same range as what we're about to talk about. I think it was that.
So it was a high tab, and there was a group in Nashville this past weekend that spent a lot of money as well. Will Chad be impressed? We'll have that coming up. OutKick 360 rolls on. Oh, so what's the most you've ever spent on a bar tab? There's two brothers recently in Nashville that went to Dierks Bentley's Whiskey Row.
Let's reframe it. It's two bros.
Two bros.
These are two bros, not just brothers. They're both biological brothers, and they're
Baez
bros.
brothers.
Bros, yes. So if you scroll up, you'll see the amount. It's over $17,000, $17,874 and some change.
74 cents.
Because they left it unpaid on Sunday morning at Dierks Bentley's Whiskey Row. How do you run up a bar tab like that without? And Chad, you asked this question.
That was a 4-hour span.
Without having a card on file.
So they're twin brothers. It was their 24th birthday bash, right? There's some real malpractice going on with the bar staff at Dierks Bentley's.
24th birthday. They're from L.A., I think, and they wanted their goals. They stated to the cops, they wanted to go viral, and they wanted verification on Instagram, and they said that this party would be legendary.
So
it was.
Didn't they also brag about spending $5,000 more at a different place right before that?
Well, it was like a 3-day bender. This was like
$40,000 total, right?
$40,000 total.
And
yeah.
all they wanted to do is get verified.
And they said, "Why did you leave this open?" Like, well, we didn't. We actually paid some of it. We paid $5,000 earlier at a different location.
They want to get verified.
You guys were confused as to how two people could do this, and I'm thinking, like, it's really not that hard if you just open up your half of the bar to everyone who wants a shot over and over. I mean, I think it's just two guys that are acting like they're big time, and they're bringing everyone over to the bar, getting shots, getting different drinks, ordering apps.
Food on me.
It's a huge feast. I mean, you can get that
there quickly. Let this be a lesson to everyone
everyone
out there that wants a blue check mark, that this is not the route to go to get verified. I think there are simpler ways. I think if you took the $17,000 to the Twitter verification department, that would be a simpler path. Bribery.
The story's from ScoopNashville.com. Here's the birthday invite.
There it is.
Jared and I, the Baez twins. Jared and I.
Hold on. Did the son or the father write this article? We need to find that out first, so Paul's not confused.
This is from Jacob.
Sounds like a son.
I was a little slow on the uptake.
We'll call him Jakob. Jakob and Jared. I have a table tonight at Whiskey Row section. At Whiskey Row section, come to Whiskey Row. I have a table. Let's celebrate. Twins' birthday. Hit me up. 10:30. We arriving to Whiskey Row. Call me.
We arriving. Grammatically not perfect, but not shocking. That it's not
my
that
fandom
way
is sinking fast
from these guys. A bunch of people just showed up and got on their tab.
We're the Baez twins of Nashville, and stay tuned. We're going to be all over the news. We're a legend for what we did today. We're going to get verified on Instagram now. We want everyone to know we're the biggest believers in God.
Wow.
Great shout out to God. Yeah, they were probably praying when they were in prison, awaiting bond.
What an unbelievable post.
There's
just so many different
amazing story from Scoop Nashville.
So many different things to dissect in that post. We're the biggest believers in God, just opening up to everyone who follows
right before
them.
that, the legend.
Also, to identify themselves, we are the Baez brothers of Nashville. Like
the twins.
It's like some old-timey, criminal outfit. You've upset the Baez brothers of Nashville. Now hell will rain down upon you.
What else you got?
The twins told Scoop Nashville, Whiskey Row, they showed us up. I gave respect to Whiskey Row big time. They threw the biggest party. It was the biggest party we had. So many bottles. The DJ got bottles. About 5 other tables got bottles. We got some stuff coming to us later. And then later the quote goes on and says, that wasn't the only party we were at. The night before we dropped $4,000 and more before that. It was basically a 3-day event. In total, we spent $40,000 in 3 days downtown.
But he's bragging about spending
LA?
the money.
Here's what I got confused. The quote: "What was LA is now Nashville."
Here's the funny thing, though. He's bragging about dropping $40,000, but they really didn't drop hardly anything because they didn't have the money. Well, so I'm bragging about spending the money, except for the part where I didn't have any money.
Well, I thought that the punchline was going to be that they thought everything was being comped because they're the Baez brothers of Nashville. and they're such celebrities. Like the way he made it sound was, boy, they really hooked us up at Whiskey Row. We're bringing bottles for us and the next table. And the DJ, did they think that they were just free? Then they said, okay, now who's going to take care of this bill?
Final quote. I mean, I want these guys in studio. They didn't know what was up. Legit, we proved our point in Nashville. You got to be prepared, because if you're not prepared for us to come and drop 40 G's on 2 tables, get ready.
They didn't know what was up. This is like the April Fool's joke.
Yeah.
Like they didn't know what was up. When you fool people with something completely believable, we ordered food and drinks, and they thought we were going to pay for it. Joke's on you.
Chad, Scoop Nashville interrupted the quote at this point. To Jacob to note that Whiskey Row would dispute that they were paid any of the $40,000 he claims to have spent, which he responded, quote, "That's confidential. They can't talk about that or release that information."
Oh.
Yes, they can.
Can I address my camera? This message is specifically to the Baez brothers of Nashville or anyone affiliated with this outfit. If you can, get in touch with these brothers, or bros, as I like to say, and get them to come in studio at Blackbird Studios with us on OutKick 360. We must make this happen. We need an exclusive interview. Scoop Nashville, Scoop There It Is, not a big enough outfit to properly cover this story. We want you in studio for at least 45 minutes where we can break down not just the Whiskey Row experience, but the full weekend of festivities. We want to do it all right here on OutKick 360. Baez Brothers, we want you on this show. Thank you.
Come to camera one next. Baez Brothers, look what we have. Ooh, paid for already.
Bottles.
Bottle service.
Redemption. We'll give you redemption.
Bottle service.
No charge.
We'll even pop this open, which is very expensive. One of these right here would have been about 1/14 of your way to your tab at Whiskey Row, the Spellmead Bourbon.
Scoop. There
By the
it
way,
is.
they posted $5,000 bond, and
Where'd they get that?
through Binkley Bonding, and each charged with felony theft of services. We can find them.
they're
guys.
not available.
We can find them in court June 4th. That's when we can go and.
David, we need to send you out on June 4th, please.
We need a court report.
Can we go live from outside the
We're
courtroom?
going live to Vinnie Politan in Court TV with.
Let's go over there.
Innocent. The Baez brothers are innocent. We got a little newsboy coming out with the news. Updating us.
Let's take a pedal tavern over there. We'll ring the bell. Innocent.
We just get an update.
Free the Baez Brothers.
The bartender is now taking the stand, and we'll testify next.
Let's listen in live. Coming up, the Tennessee Power Hour on OutKick 360. OutKick 360 and the Tennessee Power Hour is here alongside Chad Withrow and Paul Kuharski. I'm Jonathan Hutton. Glad you're with us. Huge shout out to Lance Lee, Jakob Swanson, David Reed, the chairman of the board, Emma Notestein, and the cast of thousands with our OutKick crew making the show happen for us across the OutKick network. Paul, for those that are listening on podcast, what would you like for them to do?
I would like for them to give us a nice rating, give us a nice review, tell their friends, retweet perhaps, tweet about us. And, you can listen to us on podcast, by the way. Apple is a very popular choice, but you can also go to Stitcher, to Audible, to Google Play. What am I forgetting?
Farmers Only.
Farmers Only, which I call Farmers Almanac, Raya.
It's a big source of content for us.
That's right. That's right. Also, one of our favorite sites, FanDuel.com/OK360.
You can listen to us there.
Yeah,
and bet.
Great offer right now for the Masters, for the greatest tournament that we will have all year. And you have a wonderful wager to make for first-time users. You bet $5, you can win $100 on the biggest event. Just to make the cut, you would pick Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth. You pick a player of those three, you deposit, you bet $5, you win $100 if that player makes the cut. Not to win the tournament, but just to make the cut and play on Saturday. Again, go to FanDuel.com/OK360.
You never know, we might read our own reviews on the podcast, on the show. This comes from Jen Cape on Apple.
Jennifer.
Says, I'm a female longtime listener who is thrilled to have a podcast as an option now. Wasn't able to listen to the previous show every day because of my work hours, but now I can listen while out for a walk after work, commercial free. Another plus.
Thank you, Jen.
Jen, you are a plus. Thank you so much for that review. And a reminder, you can rate us, review, subscribe, whether it be on anywhere you get your podcast. Also, just hit that like feature on YouTube if that's where you're watching today.
And share the feed on Facebook and on Twitter at OutKick360. Tennessee Power Hour coming up in about 6 minutes. We will have some of the renderings that Chad's been able to get a hold of for the Vanderbilt Commodores and the athletic facilities upgrades. We'll review those live with you. We've glanced at them, but have not reviewed them. The renderings, we can't wait to do that here on OutKick 360. But first, let's hit some Tennessee headlines, Chad, and it starts with a transfer for the Tennessee basketball program.
Justin Powell is headed from Auburn to Tennessee. Went to Auburn and played for Bruce Pearl. Only played for 10 games in his freshman year, suffered a concussion, was out for the rest of the year. 6'6" shooter, a big guard, exactly what Tennessee needs, a shooter. He was a 44% three-point shooter in his short time there in Auburn. He's from Kentucky originally. He has some animosity towards his home state school because they did not offer him a scholarship, but he looked like he was going to be a big-time player, an all-freshman player at Auburn before he got injured, and he is the sharpshooter that Tennessee needs. Big addition for Rick Barnes, pairing him with Kennedy Chandler, five-star point guard who's coming in. He just got a few more assists, I think, next year with Justin Powell on the perimeter. Big for Tennessee now is they need a big man. Fulkerson's yet to announce. I think he's going to come back. That's just me guessing and reading the tea leaves that he's going to use that extra year and come back. That's going to help give them some good depth and another experienced guy in the post. But they badly need Jalen Gardner from ECU or one of these big guys that are still out there in the transfer portal that have been productive at their previous stop and have a lot of experience. They need to add one of those players to this roster.
Where are they right now in terms of recruiting?
Well, they're
when I say where are they right now, I mean in the conference.
Their recruiting class isn't great only because they only have 2 players. And they didn't have a lot of room initially. Now they're going to have 2 guys go to the draft early.
Right.
Jaden Springer's announced. Eves Pond still hasn't announced anything. Keon Johnson will go, we all assume.
Yeah.
He's going to be a lottery pick, so there's another one. But they've got Mashik, a big guard, a really good defensive player originally out of California who's coming in, and of course Kennedy Chandler. But they've got spots. I mean, they could add 2 or 3 more transfers, especially if it's a grad transfer or someone coming in for a year. They could still add guys to this roster.
So the door's open.
Yeah, and then look, Justin Powell is step one. they needed a shooter and a big man. They got their shooter, and I think they got the best one on the market that's got a lot of eligibility left. He only played 10 games as a freshman at Auburn. If he can get immediately eligible, that's an immediate. There's still some question about it, even though there's really not a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Now with the NCAA that they may have to sit out a year, but he should be eligible immediately as long as he is. That gives them the shooter, bigger guard they need. They need a big man. If they get a big man in the transfer market, it's a team, once again, that's going to be picked top 3 or 4 in the SEC, I think, next year. That's going to be a tournament team. At least that's the expectation going into the year.
We've got to offer a quick congratulations to Hutton on his camp counselor. They were all disappointed when Hubert Davis showed up instead of Michael Jordan.
Yep.
But he's now the head coach at the University of North
Davis.
Carolina.
There was, by the way, there was a story there at MTSU basketball camp. There was a kid that asked for he had 2 pairs of shoes, Hubert Davis did. And a kid asked for one of them, and he said no, like one of the pairs, as like an autographed item. And he just walked off down the tunnel at Old Murphy Center.
The guy needed his 2 pairs.
And he was gone. Everyone disappointed, and that kid was left crying.
UNC fans hoping that they won't have the same disappointment as Hutton did and all the children at the MTSU camp with
or
Hubert
the
Davis
Knicks
as the hire.
with Hubert Davis's mediocre professional career.
Yeah,
Yes.
The Hubert Davis hiring to me is North Carolina saying it's really tough to screw this job up, right? Like, we're going to hire a guy we're comfortable with that played here. Roy Williams, it was his appointed guy, Roy Williams, that carried a lot of weight, which it should. Said Hubert Davis should be the hire. I also feel like I saw last night, it was Kenny Smith was on the pregame coverage. They asked him about Hubert Davis. He's a North Carolina Tar Heel also. And he said, it's great because we got a guy now that's really going to connect the past to the program and really welcome alumni with open arms. And I'm thinking, Brad Stevens wouldn't have done that too? Like, name me the idiot coaches that would take the North Carolina job and not embrace the past. Someone going to shut out Michael Jordan from team activities or being around the team if they take the job?
I've never understood why anyone. I don't know why you would go to any university at any level
and not accept
and
whatever
shut the door for past players that were legends for what you deem some of the best years of your program's history, not just North Carolina history. Any program, you embrace what you've been building.
It's happened before. Derek Dooley did it to some extent at Tennessee. Lane Kiffin did it to some extent at Tennessee, wanting to erase the past. And we're going to bring USC in. It's going to be like a USC mantra in Knoxville. But if you take the North Carolina basketball job, I just can't imagine a coach that could first be offered the North Carolina job that's gotten to that point in their career would be so dumb as to not embrace the past and welcome back alum. It just makes
James
sense.
Worthy, GTFO.
Well, it was just weird the way Kenny Smith, and I know what he's getting at, like, well, he's one of us. Roy Williams was like a walk-on player at North Carolina also. I just don't. Did Roy Williams shut out alumni when he was there? No. Like, no one's going to shut out the alumni. So it was a weird endorsement of Hubert Davis to say, now we feel like we can come back and we have one. Thinking anybody who takes that job is going to embrace North Carolina basketball's history. You'd be an idiot not to.
We mentioned some of the headlines for the Tennessee Power Hour, but the staple of the hour will be our reaction to the renderings of the Vanderbilt facility upgrades. Chad, you were able to see these this morning, and you brought them with you for an unveiling when we come back.
A little show and tell that these have not been released anywhere that I've seen so far, but these are some artistic renderings of the map plan of where the new facilities will go on Vanderbilt's campus, but also an inside look at some of these facilities and what it may look like. Really cool to get a look at these. And you hear $300 million investment. Now you get to see some of that take place. So we're excited. This is sort of a OutKick 360 show and tell. If you're watching, you're going to be able to see these renderings. We'll talk about them, explain them, and go through each one of them as we unveil them also, and that's coming up when we come back.
Straight ahead on OutKick 360. It is OutKick 360 and the Tennessee Power Hour. If you're listening to Knoxville and Fox Sports Knoxville, we appreciate that. Give us a shout and let us know that you can hear us on Twitter at OutKick 360. Chad, you got a hold of the renderings for the Vanderbilt upgrades, and let's preface this by saying we are thrilled that Vanderbilt has announced the $300 million project to upgrade facilities for their athletic program. This is a massive need for their facilities and for those teams, specifically football and basketball, that are going to be upgraded and impacted significantly. What did not accompany that announcement were any renderings or mock-ups of what they were going to do. I'm not saying that wasn't going to come. Clearly, they are discussing this behind the scenes, and Chad was sent these renderings and a few other documents this morning.
I'm glad that they didn't put them out so that you could get them and we could have this seemingly exclusively. But I don't understand why 10 days removed from the announcement they're available that they didn't put them out
it is
with the announcement.
Well, and we'll once we're done showing these on the show, we'll tweet all these out as well from OutKick 360. Another reason to follow us on Twitter if you're not already at OutKick 360. Feels very top secret that we're going to show these. By the way, big day for me with Vanderbilt. This announcement, and we get to unveil this on OutKick 360, and I found out that Jerry Stackhouse has blocked me on Twitter, much like many media members out there who aren't impressed with his overall win-loss record. So, fun. All right, let's get to these slides.
Maybe he's headed to Carolina.
Slide number 1, we're going to show you right now.
Slide number 1.
This is an aerial view of the athletic layout and sort of the physical plant of everything athletics on Vanderbilt's campus. And you can see in the brighter gold where the additions are going to happen. Now, no surprises here. And guys, we're looking at this together. Right next to Memorial Gym, really on top of it, in one corner is going to be the basketball operations center.
Yep.
That's number 1 on this slide. That is a great spot for that. Anyone familiar with going to football games there or even parking in that hotel area garage over there, you walk through behind that end zone into Memorial Gym. That's always the way I would enter Memorial Gym, is on that side. And they're going to have a state-of-the-art basketball operations center, offices for coaches, locker room, practice courts, all of that. Training room will be right there in slide number 1 in the corner of Memorial Gym, which is a really cool spot for that. Number 2, the football operations building. And I want to get your thoughts on this. Just optically, I think it will look cool. I want a new stadium, first and foremost. They're not going to do that. So I think this is a good option if you're not going to tear down that stadium and build a new one. And you don't need those end zones closed in. You're having a hard time selling tickets in that stadium regardless.
For those that
so
are listening,
make it something that's really nice to look at in that end zone.
For those SEC fans that are listening right now that are familiar with the concept of the stadium on television, the end zone for the football operations building and the rendering here is above where the locker rooms are, correct?
Yes. It's the closed end zone.
It's the closed end zone. So they're going to take that closed end zone and change it into
a building.
So Arkansas has something like this. They have that enormous facility in one of their end zones where it's like 7 stories, it looks like. It's glass. People are up there looking out. I'm seeing it as that. Probably an area where alumni and donors can sit and watch the game in one of the floors. Then it's going to be a football facility on the backside of
West
that. West
Virginia also has something similar to this. I can't remember really what it looks like in the stands, but its weight room opens up right onto the field.
Yeah.
And I remember this from when I was there doing the Pac-Man Jones story that you referred to earlier. The weight room kind of goes right out onto the field. So if you were running, you could, do your workout right out of the weight room, which I thought was a cool concept.
Well, and number 3 on this list, we'll get to, and I can explain it this way because it's a combo deal. If you've been to a game at Vanderbilt, this is for any SEC fan, any college football fan who's familiar with the layout. So number 2 is going to be the football ops building in that closed-in end zone. So replacing, it looks like, the closed-in end zone will be the football operations building, where Vanderbilt walks from the Guggen Center into the stadium.
The Star Walk.
This is their Star Walk across Jess Neely Drive. That is going to go in through the football operations building now and then onto the field. in that end zone. The opposite end zone that's open with trees that you see like kids hanging out in.
Where the Marriott
sometime.
is.
Yes, where the Marriott is on the
PF
one side. Opposite of the Marriott in that end zone will be basketball operations. McGugin Center, don't need to spend much time on this. They're expanding it.
It's going to take up that whole block instead of up to the tennis center. Tennis center, then McGugin. Now McGugin will get extended over towards those parking lots that people park in.
It's going to look a lot better and be bigger, but it's in the same spot. You know, they're renovating McGugin Center where it's going to be there. Number 4 is the indoor football practice facility located behind McGugin Center. Now, this is where I'm a little bit confused. Are they just improving the one that's already there?
No.
Or is this going to be completely new?
This is a new indoor. This is an outdoor practice field now that runs, I think that's just Neely Boulevard. So it'll run behind the new McGugin Center, parallel to the track. Most people know the
Natchez
track
Trace.
there. Natchez Trace.
It's on the side of Natchez Trace.
So it's along Natchez Trace, and it'll run parallel to the track that people know. A lot of people run there or work out there. So it'll run right up Natchez Trace.
And then next to it will be a renovated outdoor field. So new football facility on top of current practice field, new practice field next to that football facility, outdoor field.
I think there may have been, I may be mistaken, this may be 2 fields with the indoor field and the outdoor field where 3 fields used to be.
Okay.
Or 2.5 fields anyway. But it's a good trade-off.
So part of this that it's not in bright gold on the slide that we're looking at right now, but interests me, is there is a layout right now that's just an empty field that says Athletics Neighborhood. I'm assuming this is going to be almost like a village of dorms and apartments.
Where is that?
For athletes. On the very bottom, you really need to be looking on your phone, Paul, to see it.
I see where you're
But on the very bottom, right next to the Phase 1, it says Athletics Neighborhood.
Those are intramural fields and the like.
Okay, so that's going to be intramural.
Well, that's what they are now.
Yeah, it's also indicating the footprint of the athletics neighborhood, which includes all of their facilities. So they'll have that lacrosse field, that soccer field. You've got the baseball stadium that's gray boxed out right now within this yellow footprint. That I took that to mean they're calling this their athletics neighborhood.
Yeah, I think it could still continue to be the same thing. That's space for athletics. That's where you'll see touch football game, flag football games, intramural soccer, ultimate frisbee, and the like.
Two biggest things that jump out to me just on the rendering is just the indoor football facility.
Yep.
The practice facility for football, and then the upgraded football operations building. Chad, you mentioned this last week. This $300 million commitment was specific to football and basketball.
Yep.
At the top of the list. This wasn't, let's discuss all the sports, including bowling, and treat everyone exactly. This was an impact moment for football and basketball specifically, and you can see based on the rendering of the football, the footprint here, exactly where the emphasis is taking place.
Well, one of our criticisms of David Williams when he was in this job was that he would treat everything exactly the same and not just state, hey, football and basketball, men's basketball is very important. This is a different direction, which is good for, I think, the Vanderbilt fan with that. Let's go to slide number 2 now, if we can, gentlemen. And this is just going to show, we don't have to spend much time on this. This is the architectural design firm, Populous, that they're using. This is a look at some of their other designs and some of their other buildings. So to give you a sense of the direction Vanderbilt's going in, the eyes of Texas are upon us because this is the model. What's been done at Baylor with McLean Stadium, not John McLean Stadium, spelled differently, even though John is a proud Baylor alum today.
They should change his
You've got that. You've got the premium seating area at Texas Memorial Stadium for the Longhorns. And you've got the Founder Suite at Kyle Field. So what I mentioned earlier, in that new facility on slide 2 in the football operations building, I'm picturing this Founder Suite that Texas A&M has as what's going to be in that building. So you're going to have glass overlooking the stadium, and there's going to be an enormous suite for top-level donors at that point. I'm sure for recruiting purposes also, They're going to have recruits there. Really, really cool when you look at the layout for what they could do with these suites.
Describe it a little bit for people listening, not watching.
I mean, it's for those listening, it looks like a really nice suite you would see at any professional stadium that overlooks any field that you're watching, whether it be a baseball suite, football, basketball, whatever it may be. There's an area behind it's a lounge, kitchen area, television, flat screens. The one that they showed here, again, this is what was done at Texas A&M, and this is what the design firm Populous has worked on before, is more of an all-encompassing club level. There's multiple TVs in a bar area. It's not just for one group.
Yeah.
There's a big spread for a lot
great.
of people that are in there, so you could have a lot of people communing together at once.
And the one from Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium is kind of a plaza type thing with seats below it, beside a three-tiered thing, that would be where the bleachers start. I don't know what kind of ideas or hints they'd take from that, given the confines of that space, but it's very attractive, sleek, modern, all of the things that you'd hope for.
I think, I don't know if you guys agree with me, I think so far, from what they announced to what we're looking at, home run.
I agree.
When I had the idea of, okay, this is cool what they're saying, the physical layout of it is perfect so far for what they can do
and they have limited
with a
space.
small amount of space.
They have limited space, and they've found the footprint.
Let's go to slide number 3. Let's go right to Vanderbilt's words on this. This is, as Jerry Maguire would say, sort of a mission statement of what they're doing. The elements. The initiative will include the following signature projects. Each one is significant undertaking in its own rights. Taken together, they catapult our ability to enhance success on and off the field for our student athletes while improving the fan experience. Star number 1, football operations building. The one, Hutton, that immediately jumped out to you when you saw it. Day-to-day home to the football program, located in south end zone of Vanderbilt Stadium, multi-story facility including a new team locker room, equipment room, training room, meeting rooms, and staff offices, and will include premium seating options such as new suites, club seats, loge boxes, and fan amenities including concessions, retail space, and much more. From a fan perspective, perfect. You're going to have multiple options for suite level. You're going to have a gift shop of some sort. You're going to have multiple concession options.
The only downside here, and we've talked about this when the initial plan came out, is that it's an end zone. And you want, ideally, this stuff to be on the sideline.
But if you're going for a place to hang out, because there's a social aspect to it.
Doesn't matter where it is.
It does. It really does.
It matters less where it is, and it's less about the football and more about the social gathering and all of that. The other thing is, all these things it's talking about, coaching offices, locker room, all of that. This is being taken out of other places. Now, the in-stadium locker rooms are terrible. They're below this on the ground level, in the entryway, really, from the street between Magoogan and the football stadium. You're also talking about taking some of these coaching offices and stuff. Where are the football coaching offices now? I presume in Magoogan. And so Magoogan's getting a facelift and an extension, and you're taking football offices
more space
out of Magoogan.
Yep. Well, and you're also going to have, Clark Lee's office is going to overlook the stadium. So when he's having someone in, he's visiting with a recruit, suddenly your visual behind his desk is going to be Vanderbilt Stadium and everything behind it, which is going to make for a much more cool visual. And picture it this way. If you look at the current setup at Vanderbilt, if you're bringing in some unnamed tech giant from San Francisco that is a Vanderbilt alum, and you're trying to schmooze that person and get them to give you $1 million, let's say, where are you taking them on that campus? There's no great place to go and say, we want, and I know this for a fact, they were serving ham and cheese box lunches to prospective donors very recently when they're bringing people in asking for money, and they're doing it in offices that are outdated. Now that's not the case. When you can bring someone in, if Clark Lee or Jerry Stackhouse is bringing in recruits and you're going to have a lunch in the new suite level that's on the top floor of this facility overlooking the stadium, it's a lot different. When you have meetings and bring people in, it's going to make for a much better
it's a central
atmosphere.
It's the hub.
Let's go back to that slide again. And let's look at the basketball center, which is the next part of this.
Now, can I, real quick?
Yeah.
Keep this up. What you just described as the hosting donors, if I close my eyes and listen to your description, it's like you're discussing MTSU and not Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they are so behind the times that it is so refreshing to finally hear and see things like this for an SEC program that deserves the attention that the university is now going to give it.
Well, this is two-pronged to pick up on that, right? The space limitations, the setting limitations that you talk about are one thing, right? And that's a serious thing. The boxed lunch limitation is a mental thing. You can get catered from Fleming's across the street, or from a variety of great Nashville
I'll give
restaurants.
an example. I'll give you an example.
You
of a
can
restaurant
get catered from anywhere. That's a mentality thing, not a structural limitation.
It's also a university, academia, coming in and saying, you are allotted this for athletics. We bring the other people in, and when we're getting the science building going, then we're going to take them over to Fleming's or do that. But because we look down on athletics, you get Jimmy John's. I love Jimmy John's. This is not disparaging Jimmy John's.
I don't.
But I can tell you right now, Jimmy John's has been served to prospective donors at Vanderbilt. I know this for a fact. That's not what you bring people in. You don't bring them into some nondescript boardroom in the back of a building and serve them Jimmy John's. You, as you said, Paul, you have someone in a white jacket and white gloves serving them Fleming's. And you can do that now in a nice space with this new development. So basketball, moving along. Day-to-day home court to men's and women's basketball programs, multi-story facility including practice courts, weight room, locker rooms, staff offices, and more. I'm not quite sure what more would be, if that's another type of entertainment room for recruits or something you have there. You know, we've been to Tennessee before, Hutton and broadcast. I think Paul was there once too. From the Peyton Manning room, for instance, it overlooks the practice field.
Unbelievable.
And it's got orange felt pool table, TVs, a mini bar. But that's a place for players to hang out, but also to bring recruits. I'm seeing something like that in the and more category in this basketball facility.
And again, there are some side benefits here. You know, they've obviously outgrown the practice courts that are part of kind of the addition to Memorial, but there are a couple practice courts tucked in there that now won't have any time that they belong to the men's and women's basketball teams that can be used for whatever, probably for, you know, other student activities that go on campus. So there's a side benefit to having some space for, I don't know, the dance team, the whatever.
So let's go to the final slide, and we'll spend the least amount of time on this. Simply put, this is coming from Vanderbilt. Our values: academic and personal development, athletic excellence, fan experience, community engagement. And you can get more information, vucommodores.com/VandyUnited. I think this is absolutely and exactly what Vanderbilt needs. They need a united front. I like the name of it, Vandy United, in raising money for athletics. I think this is a great step one. I don't think this is all that needs to be done, but I think this is an enormous step. And I think it's probably going about 60 to 70% of the way of the full measure.
And how
of
long
what needs to be done eventually.
How long have we been waiting on this?
Well, they need to renovate Memorial
I've lived
Gym.
in Nashville since '97.
Yeah, I don't think you blow up Memorial Gym, but there's some things aesthetically and just with that physical space that needs to be done in concourses, with heating and air.
I don't think the heating and air
things.
thing can ever be solved to the degree that we want. Like, you can't just go in there and put in air conditioning. Like,
well, something needs to be
done. I think there are physical limitations of what you can do in there, and I'm a big fan of the building. I love watching games.
How is that possible? How can you not put?
Well, I mean, I think it costs so much.
We need to get a contractor on the line and explain how that could be
I don't get that at all. We can go to the Hermitage that was built in the 1700s.
But Paul, they just raised $300 million. I guarantee it doesn't cost $300 million to put heating and air into Memorial Gym.
No,
so they can do it.
I have to go back.
I'm not saying.
I'm
not saying what you're saying is wrong.
I'm trying to figure out how you can't figure out a way to heat and cool the building.
Well, they heat it. It's the cooling. I think that's the major issue.
Is their argument that they don't need it much in the summer months?
Well, I mean, I think it's not a number one pressing thing on their list.
Well, there's just, look, there are things, again, this is a great step. So I don't want to take what is a great step from Vanderbilt and turn it into, but they need to do this, and this, but they still do need to do this, and this. Part of it is
great
the actual,
first step.
well, the physical structure of the stadium is going to remain the same. That end zone is going to be a lot nicer. The formerly closed-in end zone now is going to be an incredible suite level club, football facility, offices, everything else. That'll be nice, but it doesn't change the physical structure of Vanderbilt Stadium,
get seat backs,
which
right?
is still
That's the number one thing.
Still not good.
Get seat backs.
And there's a lot that could be done there, but this is a great step.
When I see this, I think to myself, they have tried to figure out a way. Where are our resources best utilized now in order to raise further resources down the road? They're going to build these facilities and host recruits. They're going to host potential clients and donors that are going to accompany the current donors that they have and try to build more money and push more money into the private donations that will hopefully bring the CPACs and bring the renovations that we're all talking about.
Yeah, I think to where we started, if you're standing in this new club area with your donors or new potential donors and they're marveling at this and you say, wouldn't it be great now if we took these two sideline sections and look at these plans we've drawn up for what those two things could be, and how marvelous would it be to be sitting in this, which looks great, and looking at those, which could look great.
Yeah.
Well, and it's all cyclical, right? I mean, we might get into this last segment of the Tennessee Power Hour, a disturbing story out of Knoxville, and I can explain to you how this story in its reporting is cyclical in a lot of ways. It's one thing feeding the other. If you get this facility and you can lock down some big-time recruits, then suddenly Clark Lee can get to 6-6 quicker than expected, start going to some bowl games, knock Tennessee off every now and again. Then you get more recruits, you get more donations, you get more money. The stadium starts to build itself with those donations. If you get a couple of it doesn't take much in basketball. You get a recruit or two that can raise the profile of your program, suddenly you're back in the NCAA tournament. That's going to lead to more donations, and then other things start happening around it. Yep. This is great for Vanderbilt because everything was so stagnant with football and basketball. There wasn't a lot of hope. There was way too much losing
going on.
And now this gives you some progress forward.
Agreed. Tennessee Power Hour rolls on, but when we come back, the latest with Deshaun Watson and the case against him and the sexual assault and harassment lawsuits where he faces 22 civil lawsuits. They are putting a name and a face with one of the 22 that's happening right now in Houston. Attorney Tony Busby holding a press conference in his office with one of Watson's accusers. That's next on OutKick 360. Tennessee Power Hour rolling on here on OutKick 360. Glad you're with us as you listen in your car, on your drive home, for podcasts, on replay. Maybe you're listening at Fox Sports Knoxville. For that, we say thank you. And maybe you're watching live. We love the OutKick 360 season ticket holders.
Love.
Like, subscribe, share, retweet. You can do all those things, and we appreciate that. And if you are on an Amazon device, you can ask Alexa to search OutKick on YouTube. The show will pop up. You can also set a reminder. Our show starts every day at noon Eastern, 11 Central, right here in Nashville at Blackbird Studio. Happening right now in Houston, though, the national headlines turn back to Tony Busby and his latest information that he's continuing to lay out in the cases against quarterback Deshaun Watson and the Texans' star quarterback, where one of the 22 accusers in the civil lawsuits against Watson has come forward to put both a face and a name behind the accusations. Her name is Ashley Solis, and she's the first person represented by attorney Tony Busby to come out publicly with a statement and with her accusations against Watson, where part of her quote, which is happening now, and the press conference says, quote, "I was afraid, I'm not afraid anymore. Deshaun Watson assaulted and harassed me. I am a survivor of assault and harassment. Deshaun Watson is my assaulter and my harasser. He assaulted me at my home, doing what I love most, massage therapy." There are others that are releasing statements through attorneys at this press conference. In fact, Tony Busby, in part of what he said that we have 22 civil lawsuits, 22 accusers. There were others that came forward, but he didn't feel like he could present those cases properly based on the information that he had. I guess in response or before a response to a question about whether or not there are others out there and how much he vetted all of the background of every individual that's come forward since the last month of all of this. And he said, look, we vetted it so thoroughly that we turned people away because I didn't feel like I could present it properly.
Another line from Ashley Solis, people say I'm doing this just for money. That is false. I come forward now in hopes Deshaun Watson does not hurt another woman. So, it's a very bad day of developments for him. We see what Rusty Hardin counters with now. I don't know what he can counter with now that softens this if people are coming out in affidavits with quotes comparable to what she's saying. We knew this was going to, continue to exponentially get worse for him, right? A name and a face and a voice it takes it to new heights for people, right?
Sure.
It personalizes it in a way.
Not a Jane Doe.
Yeah.
But it also, Rusty Hardin can't. I thought it was a real misstep to present 18 women masseuses that weren't harassed by Deshaun Watson. It just all it did was bring in how many masseuses does one person need? That was the immediate question. It's just an odd thing to come back and say, well, I gave him a massage and I wasn't
harassed.
I wasn't attacked by Deshaun Watson.
Oh,
it's
great!
amazing.
Yeah,
great.
Congrats.
I mean, it's really, really bad for Deshaun Watson. There's no escaping punishment from the league now. That's going to happen at the very least. I'm sure that they're now crafting a way to defend him legally, not just from civil suits, but with the investigations going on with Houston Police Department and other law enforcement agencies. That's going to be their focus now, is avoiding criminal prosecution.
And so the Ashley Solis, who you'll see across social media and news reports with her statement in person, there is another statement from another Watson accuser, Lauren Baxley, her statement being read right now at this press conference in Houston, where she says that he insisted on a nude massage despite and directed her to touch areas she didn't want to touch. And again, the presser continues. The next bit of news I'm waiting on is what the NFL plans to do. There's now more than enough evidence to suspend Deshaun Watson indefinitely and place him on Commissioner Goodell's list. The precedent is there based on what he's done with other players in the past. There should be no doubt where the NFL stands on this, and to this point they have been completely silent. And they cannot stand silent with accusers coming forward in the amount that they're doing already, and now publicly in front of a camera and directing things at Watson and how things have been handled at this point.
The list is really used as a way to handle games and pay and that stuff. So that they don't need to use the list until they get into closer to the season. In terms of saying something, I mean, at some point they're going to have to say something. Right now they can stall because there's nothing.
Shouldn't they do something before the
he's
draft?
going to do.
I mean, just for the plans of the. I mean,
Well,
I know
the
the Texans know it's
offseason-
probably going to be bad.
The off-season schedule begins
protecting him.
April 16th, April 15th.
17th or 19th. New coach is a week earlier than that. So it
Not
could-
this year though, right?
I'm not sure that.
Because everything's virtual.
Yeah.
I think they just opened it up. My point is,
He may still get some extra time, Cully. I'm not sure. But he's not going to that anyway. He wasn't going to that anyway. So they could
yeah, that's not the league's
continue
directive
to
to
sweep
determine
it
whether or not
under
he's
the-
going to that or not.
under the rug.
They shouldn't be sitting around waiting. Everyone, the next bit of info will be from the NFL.
It should be.
Well, it's
But I
just-
won't be surprised if they just stay mum on it for as long as they can.
Isn't it amazing, though, that remember when the biggest offseason story was Deshaun Watson's discontent with management with the Texans and how big of a story that was going to be all offseason?
Well,
I mean, can't you think if you're Deshaun Watson, boy, remember the simpler time when I was just unhappy with the way things were going from a football standpoint with my team and I was demanding a trade. And now this happens. And it further complicates everything.
I just think of all the past off-season storylines that we've had. You know, the one that comes to mind, Adrian Peterson and his discipline of a child.
Yeah.
And going to meet with Commissioner Roger Goodell about it. You know, that's a national headline, and that's followed. The NFL, you know, didn't stay silent on that.
Yeah.
It's.
I think that the unfortunate thing is that they've learned, quote unquote, learned that the thing that they can maybe get away with is just to push it as far down the line as they can for as long
There's no
as
reason
they
to,
can.
though. There's no reason to. You're allowed to gather information.
They're gathering information.
But
I
you know,
don't
the
doubt
reports
that.
coming out. The reports coming out that the Philadelphia Eagles and Miami Dolphins are monitoring the situation on whether or not they want to make an offer, and that the Texans are now picking up the phone. That should just be that should just be canceled out. Like there will be no discussion about this until we determine that he's playing or not.
I don't. Do you think it's conceivable the league would allow a transaction to be made? I think if those teams
they shouldn't even allow the speculation to happen.
Conversation to happen.
I mean, they've acted quicker with less information and evidence before with players than they have with this.
And I'm not
I think
saying,
this
by the way,
represents them changing.
I am not saying that they should come out and definitively say, here's the punishment and here's how. I'm not saying that. But they should
He's
come
frozen.
out.
They should freeze
Absolutely,
him.
they should.
You know, what's prompted the change, though? I'd be curious if they have changed with their thinking. Is it that they took heat and they didn't like their quick response to the kneeling controversy? And what's going on with that? I'm trying to think of what the league, like what would have prompted, because I'm with you, Paul, it may represent change, but I'm just trying to think what moment represented now we must wait to discipline someone.
Until today, and the reason why I say that's the next storyline to watch, until now, we've just had the number 22. Like it's gone from 11 to 13 to 16. The number goes up. Now you have a face with a name, and you have a press conference that's going to be on repeat. And
it's probably not going to be the last press conference.
He has two of the 22 that Busby is representing that have come forward to this point in the presser. By this time next week, maybe we're discussing 15 names.
I think their wait, Chad, is until there's something forces them to do something. And with virtual off season, there's no chance of him being somewhere, showing up to something. He's not going to be at this virtual stuff. And so they conveniently don't have a thing where he could show up to something. So there's nothing until training camp, technically, right? And I think technically, they could just kind of freeze him, but there's an understanding behind the scenes that he's frozen and he's going to be in limbo. It lets them off the hook to say something or do anything because he's just on ice.
I'm just seeing at some point this, I think about with Harvey Weinstein and the different stories written where it's a kaleidoscope of victims and you see all their faces and pictures in a bunch of boxes over the story and they all come forward and it's a big profile of all of them. That's what's coming for Deshaun Watson, and that's not going to be good.
No, that's
not going to be good for anyone.
It just started right now.
Yep. Yeah. That in my mind, that's what I'm seeing happening in the next month or two.
It tarnishes the league. I mean, I don't know what their.
Well,
no, there's no damage control that can be effective here, except to appear
the league,
disgusted.
I also want the league didn't do this. The Texans didn't do this.
It's not the league's fault.
But they have a personal conduct policy in place for this, specifically for this.
And the number one thing they seek to do with that personal conduct policy is take away your ability to play. And I don't doubt that they'll take away his ability to play. And that's the number one thing they want to take away.
I just don't know what they're
right?
waiting on at this point. I mean, unless it's just convenient that they don't have anything going on.
Yeah, I think
so they don't have to say anything. But Hutton's right in that they have plenty of info and evidence to say you're indefinitely suspended. You're on whatever the list is, the commissioner's list, whatever, and you're not a part of the league while this is going on. We've heard enough, we've seen enough. We can do that now. And then when the dust settles, when we see if there's criminal charges and we see what happens with the civil suits, then we can come back and say you're out for a season, you're out for a half a season, whatever the punishment is. But they could take the step down and just say you're just indefinitely suspended.
We are back at it tomorrow for OutKick 360. A lot of headlines to hit tomorrow. We will discuss the NFL draft and much more. Big thanks to our great crew on hand for making the show happen today. OutKick the Show with Clay Travis coming up in a couple of hours right here on the OutKick Network.
Don't block the box. Definitely lock the locks. See ya.